Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to Plenty for Everyone. I am Jennifer Mulholland and joined today with my partner, Jeff Shuck.
Hey, everybody.
I am calling in from Heartspace, our beautiful retreat center in Park City, Utah, on a very chilly -2-degree snowy day at the kickoff of Sundance, the film festival that brings over 100,000 people to our beautiful mountain town. And Jeff, why don't you tell everybody where you're calling in
I
from?
am in cold and snowy South Bend. It's a few days after Notre Dame just lost the national championship game to Ohio State. So the whole town is a little bit sad and dreary, but it's really cozy weather, actually. It's nice to be bundled up inside and watch the snow come down.
Yes, and it's crazy to think that it's January, 23rd? It's amazing that we're already 23 days into the new year of 2025. The year of closure we complete this cycle. Of a 10-year decade. So it's a powerful year and this is a powerful week. So if you're not tracking, this is we're right in the midst of the planetary parade where six planets plus the moon equaling seven are in alignment in the night sky, and we can actually see it with our naked eye. So I was outside last night and this morning seeing Saturn, Venus line up with the moon. I can't really see Neptune, but it's pretty incredible of what is happening energetically coming into the planet for alignment to a new possibility. And so we are so grateful to be able to talk to you today to kick off the theme of love that is fast upon us for the month of February, as we explore what it's like to lead with love, to lead ourselves, to lead our loved ones, to lead our colleagues, to lead a movement, to lead a better way and a better world. And so Jeff and I are going to be exploring that throughout the month in February, and we're kicking it off today with some reflections.
Yeah, and maybe just to give a little context to that, Happy New Year as well to everyone who's hearing us for the first time in 2025. We've decided to try something a little bit different this year, and every month we're going to be picking a theme to share, not just on a podcast about, but we're going to blog about it. We're going to make our social posts aligned to it, and hopefully release some downloads too that can help you as you lead in work and lead in life and figure out what's important to you. So we're turning over a new leaf. I'm excited about it. And I want to give a little background to this theme because we were talking a couple weeks ago about the theme for February. And I think pretty immediately it's obvious that in February, everybody is talking about love. And we quickly said the theme is going to be self-love, how to love yourself. And after sitting with that for a day or so, Jen, you came back and said, no, I don't think it's self-love. I think it's love. I think it's about the idea that love is a part of what we do at work, not just what we offer ourselves. And that really is the basis of a lot of what we want to talk about today. I thought it was an awesome insight, and it takes us into a lot of the things that we not only talk about at Lantern with individuals, but we talk about in our work with companies about why passion is at the center of business and how you show love to your customers, your donors, your teammates, your boss, and all those other people that you see from 9 to 5.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I think it's funny to kind of intellectualize and talk about love because love is a frequency. It's an energetic vibration. And if you've studied or have heard about David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, love is equated at a 500 numeric value. It's a high emotion from a frequency standpoint. And it leads to higher states of frequency like joy and compassion. And I can't think of a better theme to practice right now as our world is going through so much change, and some are, feeling scared and concerned, and some are feeling like enlivened and hopeful and excited. So, wherever you are on that scale, what we want to explore today is the energetics of love and how it is a transforming, healing force for ourselves, for our work, for our way. And if you've ever had a newborn baby yourself, or if you've gotten a new pet, whether it's a cat, a bird, or a dog, like think back to that moment where, I don't know, like that memory where your heart expanded beyond what you thought was capable. I remember the first time I laid eyes on my son, and I could feel my heart space expand beyond what I thought was possible. Or when I got Toby and brought him home, my golden doodle who's now 6 years old, and that joy, that pure love, that essence that just wrapped and expanded. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a frequency, a feeling, a come from that we can offer anybody in our field. And we can certainly offer it to the work that we do and how we show up for ourselves. So that's kind of what we're going to explore throughout the month.
Yeah, and if the language of, kind of frequency or energy doesn't sit with you, I love that way of thinking about it of it's a feeling, it's something that you kind of know when you feel it, but it's hard to describe what it is. Maybe just stay in that place and follow us as we talk through it. What I loved about this topic and where we want to start is the idea of loving your work. And what I thought was really interesting and very plenty is to introduce that topic first. There's a lot of talk nowadays about self-love and self-care, and it's wonderful. I don't want to dismiss any of it because it's really needed. But there's a lot less talk about how love can be part of business and why it needs to be part of what you do most of the hours of your waking day. So let's start there. And how, Jen, if you're talking about frequencies and vibrations and energies, what does that look like at work? And when we say love your work, what are we meaning?
I love that. Well, to begin with, I think it feels so relevant in the shifting world of money to think about love being the currency of business. Like, what if that could be true as we look in the stock market and Bitcoins and different you know, blockchains and different global digital currencies are coming online, and meme coins, and a whole birth of a new currency of financial exchange. You can think about it as an exchange, a reciprocity of giving and receiving, of creating value, of creating harmony, of creating worth and wealth. Um, and it's easy to think that love just lands and stays in the at home or on the weekends with your friends or with your children and loved ones. But what if truly the currency of our business, our work environment was love? What if we came from that place of exchange? And we have a role to play. Like we are the conductors of that. We are the directors of that. We are the producers of that good energy, good feeling. And when we have a good feeling in the room, when we have a good state of mind, a more optimistic view of the world, we actually become more productive, more efficient. We create more value in our workplace and on our projects and with our teams. So we often see when we go into work environments dysfunction where people are in silos. And oftentimes, it's not the silos that's perpetuating the misunderstandings or the holding back. It's it's an environment where that trusting that it's safe enough to show your love for yourself and for your fellow colleague or team member or a person across a department or for your boss, like that just has felt like scarier ground to express and to show. So there's a real invitation to think about at work, how are you really contributing to a currency of love in your in your to-dos, in your projects, how you're interacting with your team, and how you're showing that to maybe your boss of how you're supporting them in what they need to get done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to smile as you're talking because people who know us, I have to just show this if you're watching on YouTube, that Jen and I actually created an outline for this podcast and things we want to talk about. And if you've worked with us before, you know, as soon as we create an outline, we're actually going to go like 45 degrees off of what we plan to talk about because you brought up a couple things that aren't on the outline that I want to speak to. Um, One is just the idea that I want to hark back to. We've talked about it a couple times on the podcast last year, and it's a theme of our book that work and effort are different. And so when we talk about loving your work, we don't mean necessarily buying into the grind or being okay with the fact that, you've got to put the reps in or that you've got to pay your dues. All of that might be what we have to experience from time to time. We're actually talking about something a little bit different, that choosing work that lights you up might be a way to say it. And that's step one, is being able to take inventory when you go into the office. And we're not saying that every day is going to be happy, but is every day engaging to you? Is what you're doing feeling like it's another term we would use or you would use, Jen, is being on blueprint. Does it feel like this is what you were made to do? And it's interesting, that could be really independent of the industry. I want to give a quick example of something I experienced just yesterday. And the industry is insurance, an industry that really I don't care much about. I'm guessing a lot of people don't care much about. I mean, the whole industry exists to protect you from stuff that you don't want to have happen in the first place. So honestly, I don't like thinking about it. I don't want to talk about it. But Plenty has a couple different insurance relationships. We have one that we've inherited for years, and we had an issue with our insurance. Their policy wasn't quite correct. There was a billing error. And talking with the person, I had to actually talk to someone on the phone, and it was so agonizing. Jen, you heard some of this story already, but I'll just summarize it to say it was so obvious to me that the person who was supposedly there to help us didn't know much about us, didn't really care about helping us, didn't read the emails. In 3 or 4 times in the same day, had to repeat myself because this person wasn't even reading what I had shared. And if that was someone that you cared about or one of your friends or a partner, you would obviously assume that they don't love you, that they weren't even bothering to read what you were writing and making you repeat yourself and just the whole tone of it was icky. Immediately after those calls were over, I called a mutual friend of ours, Jen, who owns an insurance company, who's someone who's taken his team through Meridian, our strategy process, and it's so obvious that he loves what he does. He called me right back. I left a message. We're a small client in this guy's huge company compared to the companies they represent. He called me right back. He wanted to know everything that happened. He asked me personally, this is the CEO of the company, to send him all of our policies. And he's already responded today saying, I'm going to take care of you and make sure that you get great service. And, it's not just that he loves insurance. I know that he loves insurance because everybody loves something, right? But he also loves us. And he
Yeah.
showed that. He loves relationships. He loves care. He loves winning deals. He loves showing people that he knows what he's talking about. And those are all the ways that love manifested in this interaction. It couldn't have been so much different, like night and day between these two people in the passage of like 20 minutes. And it really changed my mood by the time I was done with him. So this small thing that was not important to me, that's a nuisance to me because he loved it, made me feel so much better. So I hope that's relevant to what we're talking about and how us loving what we do can help other people have a better day or a better life simply because we infect them with, what we see as possible or the enthusiasm we have.
Yeah, and you deserve that feeling. Like you deserve to love what you get to do and where you get to do it and who you get to do it with. Like I think we often settle for an environment that we've outgrown, or
Hmm.
we often, including myself, like forget to revisit like what actually does light me up.
Right.
Where do I naturally lean in? What am I really good at that comes easy? And do those two things align with the need at work, right? Or who we're serving? And sometimes that changes. A lot of times it changes, but would encourage you, if you're listening to this, to really give yourself permission to do that reflection and then grant yourself permission to make the change if you are out of alignment with that now, because life is too damn short to settle. And if you're needing help, kind of really wanting to figure out, do I really love the work I get to do? Like, do I love my work? We have a beautiful model that's easy. It's got instructions in our latest book, Leading with Light, Choosing Conscious Leadership When You're Ready for More. And it's on page 91. I'm not sure where it is in our Audible version, but if you'd rather listen to it, you can go listen to it on Audible. But it's called the Trinity of Alignment. And it's a really simple model and exercise that we facilitate with for-profits, nonprofits, entrepreneurs, and teams to help them get clear about what am I lit up about? What are my passions? Like, where do I lean in? What do I love to do? And then where am I naturally great at? Like, what are my strengths? And we really believe that your strengths completely correlate to what you light up about your passions. And then when you're clear about those two things for you, and maybe those have changed over time, then you get to correlate them and align them to the need at work, to the need of the business, to the need of the customer you're trying to serve. Like, are those things in alignment? So just would encourage you that we're living at a time where there is a lot of change and there are a lot of options. And to make sure that you're loving where you get to be and that you're loving who you get to do it with. Now, we are not saying, like in the insurance example, like there are people you don't vibe with and that just rub you the wrong way. And sometimes, like, you would choose a different team or you would choose a different boss. But what if you could really reflect and offer a more compassionate, loving state of being wherever you choose to show up and allow um, yourself to receive that back? So, work is not separate. We're hoping to bring that into the conversation that we're able to really align with what lights us up, and you deserve to explore where that is for you.
Yeah, and you're taking us into the next point we wanted to talk about, which is loving the people you work with. But a last point, since you brought up the Trinity of alignment, I just want to point out back to the insurance example. I think we see the people we coach get hung up a little bit on form versus substance and thinking that loving your work means being attached to a form. So, well, I'm creative, so I need to be an artist, or I hate numbers, so I don't want to do anything in accounting. And that might be true, but actually, love attaches much more to substance than form. There's a lot of ways to be really creative in something like insurance. There's a lot of ways to be a people person in accounting. There's also ways to be in the art business that are really, really soul sucking. So, when you are doing an exploration of what lights you up, think beyond kind of a title or a specific industry into I like people, I like learning things, I like helping other people learn things, I like making money, I like accomplishing things. Those are going to lead you into places that you're going to find are way more portable than saying, I have to be a painter. Now, where you were taking us into the idea of loving who you work with, I love that what you just started to tee up. Years ago, I met with a police chief, and this was when I was in event planning and running an event company. And I went to a seminar about how do you work with local police officers. And he gave me a piece of advice that was so helpful. He said, remember that every police chief is just like you. They have a boss. And he was trying to say, like, this person who you look at as authoritarian or a rule follower, they have other people that they need to look good in front of. They have they have reports they need to fill out. They have requirements and things that are expected of them. And it was his way of saying, everyone is a person. And I think that's where you're starting this idea of loving the people that you work with starts with understanding that they're not, NPCs in this world that are put there to please you. They're full and complete people who have their own needs and their own emotions and their own things going on in the world that most of us don't see.
Yeah, I think earlier in our career too, you and I got the privilege and I think the wake up call to see that a lot of the CEOs that we work with and the high level executives and the board director and the board chair, like when we got private time with them, all the personal shit came out. Like
Hmm.
you and I have so many countless
Yeah.
stories of advising a CEO or a senior executive on really big demands that of growth, right? Whether it would be revenue or a timeline or reporting to the board at a certain time of outcomes or fundraising goals. Um, and you could see within a few minutes of the door shutting and having a private one-on-one, all of the personal human stress came out.
Hmm.
And it really helped us see that people, regardless of status or role or title, are dealing with the same issues we all deal with. They're self-inflicted pressures, pressures to perform, pressures to deliver, pressure to have the answer and the solution, pressure to fix, like all that stuff. So I think one of the ways that we can practice being more of a loving presence with those we lead and those who lead us is to slow down, to get into our hearts, like literally practice catching yourself when you are finding that you are thinking about how to respond to the information coming at you before you, like, as it's happening in real time, that you can just drop into your heart space and feel, where is this person coming from? Are they smiling when they're talking to me?
Hmm.
Are they frowning? Are they fidgeting? Do they feel stressed? Where are they coming from? And literally from that centered place of your heart, to send love, to send compassion, to send understanding, to send a deep wrapping of listening to where they're coming from and what they're saying. Just that alone can change the currency of business, the currency of the exchange human to human, leader to leader, and would just say that your boss is needing love too. Like we often as leaders are looking at the people we lead and they need love more than ever. But we kind of, I will say myself included, I was just constantly trying to figure out how to please my boss through performance. Um, and never really thinking that, they needed a listening ear too. They needed to be checked in on. They needed to be told that they did a really great job in that meeting. You know, they needed to be shown that actually they're supported by their reports and by people they're investing in. And so I think it's a way that we can practice exchanging love. There's no better place than at the workplace because it's so needed. And oftentimes it's held back or it's compartmentalized because it may look soft or it may look um, different than the way business or the way meetings are gone about to get something done, to accomplish, to work through, to solve, rather than to really think about how are we contributing to the feeling in the room, the feeling in the program, the feeling in the offer that we are wanting to design for and come from.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good points in what you just shared. I love, first of all, I think everybody gets this, but just since you went there to make it clear, when we talk about love at work, we're not talking about romance. We're talking about all the other markers of a loving relationship, respect,
Yeah.
care, reciprocity, listening, presence, all of those things that you notice. And there's so many ways to show that. I also want to point out to something that you said earlier. Part of the practice here in loving your coworkers is being able to love yourself enough, and we're going to get to that in a second, that you're able to step out of your ego. And we've talked about this a lot over the last couple of years, that in our experience, the more confident and conscious someone is, the less they need to bring ego into things. And your ego coming into things can be a good marker that, oh man, maybe I'm not thinking at the most conscious level that I want to be. When we work with really high performing teams, and we had a couple opportunities last year with some incredible teams, it's amazing to see how unpersonal the conversations are and how everyone is able to put issues and talk about issues from all sides without taking any of the content personally. We had an opportunity last spring to see a person give an entire presentation on why his team should be dissolved. It's amazing. I can't think of many organizations where someone would be that confident and that trusting of the people around them to say, I don't think my large organization should exist the way that it does. And so part of the practice of loving other people is to have confidence in ourselves, to be accepting of ourselves so we can be a little less selfish, right? So we have enough sense of self that we don't take things as personally.
Yeah, I think that leads into really understanding how what your leadership way is and how do you love your way.
Mm,
As we get older, I think it's harder to change. Our way is kind of indoctrinated in a bit. And I guess I'm learning as I'm getting older that, if I could accept more that I have a way. And instead of trying to change that, what would that look like if I could really go deeper into being intentional with that way? I think what you're sharing kind of teed up a thought about, loving our way and how we lead without ego, as you're describing in the example, oftentimes requires us to set a clearer boundary. That love can express itself through no, not now. This doesn't work for me. um, I don't resonate with the environment here any longer. I don't work well with this team. It's draining. I'm coming home exhausted,
mm,
depleted. Um, I'm overwhelmed. Something needs to change. Like all those thoughts and reflections are cues to help you align back to the way that works for you. And sometimes you can't get that alignment in the environment you are currently working in. And sometimes it just might be that you need to have a deep conversation with one person that is
Mm,
very difficult to work with. But, really understanding yourself to know how do you love your way? How do you align to what works for you? And making choices to um, strengthen that more, right? Like, and to understand that actually maybe now's the time where I need to put some boundaries in, that this is not working. Or in your example, the team's no longer needed.
mm.
We need to restructure or we need to rethink. So those are all acts of loving kindness, not only to yourself, but to the people around you that, we genuinely believe that when we are pushing against, when we are forcing something, when we are feeling like we are coming up against roadblock after roadblock, like it's off. Some people desire to push through all that, and that works for them. It has not worked for us. It has been a cue to follow flow, to follow where the current's leading, to look for ease, to look for harmony in relationships and within the work environment. And I think for us, like that is something that has worked and definitely feel like it's a practice to to consider going forward.
There's two things you're pointing to that I want to emphasize. And one is the idea of giving ourselves permission to not have to be great at everything, to not have to be the most qualified person in the room on every single issue. And that's part of kind of learning the grace and learning the conscious leadership and learning some selflessness too. I had a chance to see an old friend last week who's in her early 50s and just took over leadership of a team of people in their 20s. And it was so touching to hear her talk. She said, I really like being a leader at this stage because these people could be my kids and they know things that I'll never understand about technology. They look at the world so differently. And it's kind of fun to be able to say, oh, wow, teach me how to do that. And what a great, what a great leadership trait to say, I don't know, teach me more about that instead of thinking that we have to be the authority on everything. So giving yourself permission to say, like, I know what I want to be great at, and I know what I'm not good at. And that's where we create an opening for teamwork and partnership and collaboration. The other thing that you said, Jen, and maybe this takes us into some announcements and next steps. How many leaders have we coached? How many teams have we worked with where someone comes to us and says, this environment is never going to work for me. It's broken. I can't be here. And after working with them for a few months, miraculously, the environment changes and they feel right at home. There is a saying, I think it's from the Aeneid. There's a saying in Latin that those who cross the sea change the sky, but not their hearts. And it means we sometimes look elsewhere like, oh, if I just leave to this next job, I'm going to have everything's going to change for me. But the changes we need to make are in ourselves first, giving ourselves permission to say no, giving ourselves permission to go home at 5, giving ourselves permission to delegate or to ask other people for help. So often the things we think are going to be changed by some external force change here, and then all of a sudden the things around us are are not only easier to bear, they're more in alignment. So part of, loving your way is understanding what you need and saying, I'm okay right now as I am. And I'm okay no matter what the circumstances are. That doesn't mean we don't need to make changes sometimes and there aren't like destructive forces around us. It's to say that all the time we can choose ourselves first. And that's a great compass for how we want to act and how we want to be.
Yeah, and I do think the invitation right now in this moment of time and history and in incarnation in human evolution is inviting us to do the work ourselves on ourselves. So the expectation for your work environment to change, um, leaders in certain positions to change, your team to change. Like, what would happen if you just accepted that it's not about anybody else changing? It's about aligning and uh, drawing up the feeling of how you want to feel and be. And love, as we've heard, and as we know in our lifetimes when we've ever been in love with somebody, or like I mentioned earlier, with a pet or a newborn, like it has no boundaries, it has no conditions. It's not dependent upon somebody else's behavior. It's coming forth from within you. That's a feeling that's enwrapping an unconditional, loving space to be. That feeling is frequency, to kind of tie it back to this idea that what if love was the currency of life? What it was the currency of business? I heard such a beautiful story about this prison mate the other day that he was incarcerated for 6 years was his prison time for selling heroin. And he had served 2 years of time. And after roughly those 2 years, he had a spiritual awakening where a sense of freedom in his self completely embodied his condition. He can't explain it, but he was overcome with a sense of feeling free in prison. And he had only served 2 years of his 6 year term. And the drugs that he had sold apparently were tested 3 times. And they were tested that, let's say, the heroin itself was measured at 65%, which equated to his 6 year prison time. Well, all of a sudden, after he had this experience of feeling absolutely free inside his heart and mind and body, he got a call and a visit from one of the, I guess, people at the prison and the lawyers and said, the drugs were retested and they were found to be 23% of the concentrate of heroin, and you've served your 2 year sentence and you're free to go. And he now travels all over the country telling this story that it has nothing to do with outside of you. It's the feeling within that changes the environment. So if you want a more loving environment at work, a little more loving culture, what if you could bring that into your own self of being and experiment with ways that you cultivate that, because it's going to look very different for you than it does for us. But give yourself permission to experiment. What could it feel and be like if I could be an expressing channel of love to my boss, to my direct reports, to my team members, to my colleagues, to my partners, to my clients, to my customers, to my loved ones, my children, my siblings? Like, if it came from you and you didn't expect anybody else to change, just play with that this month. What if that could be a just different feeling? Instead of wanting something else to change, you're totally empowered that if it's not working for you, to make a different choice and bet on yourself, to take the leap of faith, that you are designed to be happy, to be in alignment with what enlivens your heart, what brings you love and helps you create the world you want to see. But it all starts with us. It's not, it's reverse engineering. So my hope is that Jeff and I are right along with you, experimenting with what does it look like to really fortify and fuel the currency of love in work, in business, and in life this coming month, and bringing way more intention to that being within our capability of feeling, um, more resting on how we're being rather than what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. We can all be the light, you know. It's a lovely point. So that's our kickoff to a month of love. We hope you will join us on our social media channels, on our blog. Sign up for our newsletter, which you can do at plentyconsulting.com, and you'll see us riffing and exploring this topic, love and work and life, all month long. We're also want to announce that on February 28th, so about a month from now, we're going to be launching the first of a monthly open awesome hour. So this is the last Friday of every month. I think at 11 Mountain, 1 Eastern, we are going to have an open virtual call. All are welcome. We're just going to help people get where they are, help people connect with other conscious leaders, help people practice what we're talking about, give you a safe place to share, connect with wonderful people like you. And it's something we've been talking about for a long time. So we're happy that it's finally real.
Yeah, and if you want to go deeper this year in really illuminating the light that you are and how you lead yourself and others in work and life, please check out our leadership retreat called Lantern. We have 3 sessions in April, June, and October. We've been doing it for almost 10 years. This will be our 21st session. It's life-changing. And if you are ready to up your game, or if you're in a transition, or really looking at like, how can I be the love that I am? How can I reconnect to who I am right now? Maybe you've forgotten, or maybe you need a reminder, with amazing conscious leaders that come into Park City from all over the world. Check us out at plentyconsulting.com/lantern. Um, and we'd love to have you. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Appreciate you
everyone.
listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Join the conversation and learn more at www.plentyconsulting.com.